Hey, collective. It's Ron again over at Becoming Enlightened Together. So today is Monday, Monday the 10th. It is the 250th anniversary of my alma mater, the Marine Corps. So I wish to say happy birthday to all my brothers and sisters out there who've served. Tomorrow, of course, is Veterans Day, and that's typically used in honor of the veterans who have fallen. As well as those who've also served. But typically, we really take time to reflect, of those who've given their life, the ultimate sacrifice, presumably in defense of this country. Now, I would argue against that, but I don't want to spend a lot of time, trying to explain my position on this. I'll just say that, I've served with a lot of very good people. And I know that for the most part, their hearts are definitely in the right place. They really feel that they're doing the right thing for their, loved ones and their country, and the man and woman to their left and to the right while they're serving. I have nothing but respect for the people that I've met in my time. I've had an absolutely magical career, so I was able to do things that very few, if anybody I've ever met, really had experience while they served, in the Marine Corps or the service in general. So with that being said, I learned a lot of life lessons, with my experiences in the military, and I'm very thankful for it, good and bad. All right. Now, I'm going to carry on from the message that we got for the week, which was yesterday. I posted the weekly message, overall energy for the entire week, Sunday through coming Saturday, as well as, for the day itself, Sunday. And it was primarily focused around the energies of those karmic personalities who are in our individual lives. Now, some of us are not aware of these people, and they are putting on a mask. Some of them are very, very good. They've been wearing a mask their whole lives. Some of them have already had some very difficult experiences that they've shared with us, perhaps the cause of, many heartaches in our lives. These people are still very much in our energetic sphere of influence, and we're seeing that reflected again within these energetic readings that I'm doing. As much as I wish that this time had already, passed by us and that we can move clearly into the next cycle, what I'm seeing is that at least for the collective, generally speaking, you are moving into that next cycle. But there are people that are still holding on to both you and to me that are really trying to make it very difficult. They don't want to let go. And they have various reasons for that. It's not going to be exactly the same thing all the way across the board for everybody, of course. It can't be. But, the situation in general is something that we are experiencing as a collective. So with that being said, now our past energy, which was basically the pre-pull I did Sunday for today, was Ingwas. Now Ingwas, in this case, it's one of the 9 that looks the same, upright or reversed. But this one was actually in the upright. Now, Ingwas is actually representative of the god Ing, which is another name for the god Freyr. Now, Freyr is basically the earth god, the god of masculinity, and the twin brother of his sister Freya, who was actually, married to Odin and taught him magic and so on. Okay, so it has all the attributes as far as, masculinity are concerned. So, a sense of heroism, your greatest potential being realized, freedom, conclusions and consequences for your actions, good or bad. Male fertility, of course, sexuality. He's always depicted as being very well endowed, in the statues that are made of him or to represent him. So basically internal growth, common virtues, simple strengths, family love and warmth, common sense, the home, a sense of feeling, rest, or in a stage of resting, time of relief and no anxiety. All loose ends being tied off so that you're freely able to move in the direction in which you are called to move or feel obligated to move. And also to listening to your intuition, and that takes practice, okay, and trust. You have to learn to trust yourself as well. Now, magically, it's often used in matters of sexuality, and fertility in terms of male masculinity and potency. It's also used in growing almost anything else, from a garden to a creative project of some kind. Okay, and like I said, I'm not going to get elaborate in the description of the magical use of these things. I'm just sharing with you some of the things that these particular types of runes both represent energetically and how they can be used magically as well. Alright, now the present energy that we have is Sowilo. It looks like a big S, so to speak. And as you notice, most of these letters that are carved, or the symbols that are carved are sharp lines, distinct angles. They're not rounded off or anything of that nature per se, because it's just easier to carve them that way. And they were developed in that. They were carved from a nut-bearing tree, way back when. But Sowilo is a very powerful rune, and this too is also one of the 9, but it's also in the upright in this case. So what it means is it's like representative of the sun, the energy and the life force that we get from the sun, as well as the lighting of our way. So clarity is among those attributes too. Honor, achievements, again in a sense of rest, your goals becoming achieved. Life force, as I've already stated, and health, of course, as you get from being exposed with periods of time in the sun. A time when power itself is going to be available to you for positive changes in your life. Victory, success, contact between your higher self and your unconscious. And that's important when you're meditating and everything else, or praying and so on. You're reaching out to a higher sources sometimes. Some of us believe that we can actually get in touch with our highest version of ourselves. So that's kind of what it's implying there. So some of these things that I'm finding within the Nordic belief systems and their mythologies, I loosely use the word religion, but I see some comparisons with Hindu belief systems, Vedic belief systems. And I'll get more into that in the future too, because I think these things are fascinating to me, and I know that history, as we're being taught to believe, is erroneous at best. Whether it's deliberate or not, that part can be argued. I believe that it is deliberate, but there are people who are mavericks that are helping carve the way as far as a better understanding of what potentially our history could look like, and the fact that there are huge gaps within it that do not add up by the conventional way of looking at things. Again, that's a whole nother story. But Sowilo talks about conscious awareness, wholeness, power, the elemental force, and the sword of flame, or the cleansing fire. If you ever saw like Game of Thrones, you had the one dude that had the sword that he would light on fire, and slay all the friggin' night walkers, the zombies, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I liked that show. I did. I admit it. Magically, Sowilo talks about being a rune of attack and power. It also talks about victory. In fact, it was used twice to represent the Nazi SS, which is kind of like their secret service, or the ones who were very close, if you will, to Hitler and all of that kind of stuff. So I mean, they adopted a lot of the ancient rune and their magical connotations and applied them to their party, which gave it, of course, a bad, just gave it a veneer of not positivity. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. But remember now, this is here long before Hitler or his party or anything like that. And that's a whole other story. Now, in terms of our challenges and our obstacles, we have Degas. Now, we pulled that twice yesterday and once for the week as well. This is, again, one of the 9 that can be looked at the same identically, reversed or in the upright. In this case, this one is in the reverse position. What that means is it talks about attitudes, radical changes coming. It talks about limits and completion of things, or the ending of something, like a cycle, for example. So it talks about feeling or coming full circle in something, the close, again, of something. Perhaps blindness and hopelessness are also part of this. So keep in mind, not only are we talking about the collective as a whole, all these energies are reflective in some way, shape, or form to the collective, but it also is representative of those, again, who are acting in a karmic sense in our lives. Those who are basically teaching us a lesson. We're teaching us how to be better versions of ourselves. There are lessons that we learn from these, these karmic connections that we have in our life. And as hard as it is, we're not to take them personally. I know that sometimes those people can make these things very personal. So it takes a concerted effort to see the lesson versus the experience that you're going through at that present moment. But I'm just trying to help you to remember that fact. These are being done or allowed in our lives so that we can become better versions of ourselves, so to speak. Okay. Now, as far as our help and advice goes, we have Ingwas. Now, Ingwas typically looks this way. Okay. Looks like an hourglass, so to speak, but it can also be represented as a diamond. That symbol that's actually in the middle of that hourglass. And that's what this one is. This time it's in the reverse. So as far as the help and advice goes, it talks about, again, marking endings and beginnings of something, milestones. So the close of a cycle is coming. And we say these things, and you have to keep in mind, as though we say, and I say we, I'm talking about all, people practicing divination, tarot, whatever the case may be, reading tea leaves or doing runes like I do. I do both tarot and runes, but time is not linear, okay? So even though sometimes it seems like they're telling us that something is happening right now or very, very near future, that could literally mean that it's happening for some of you right this very minute. But for others of us, it may be happening at a later point in time. It is going to happen. It just hasn't happened yet. So don't think of time in a linear sense if you can get away from that. I know that's the way we're programmed to think of it, in this reality, but it's not real. And we're waking up to that fact the more we understand, fields like quantum physics and, things of that nature these days. But that is basically just telling us, in a sense, that it is going to happen. Prepare yourself for the end of this cycle, but there are still some lessons that have yet to be completed in your particular life for some of you. Although, again, some of you may already be coming to the closing parts of this journey or this particular cycle. Some have already gone through it, and you're on the other side. A lot of us are still, in that process, okay? Now, the overall weekly energy is Perthrow. Perthrow in the reverse, I might add. So Perthrow, I'm sorry, it's Gibo. I pulled the wrong one. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to confuse you. But the overall weekly energy as a whole was Gibo. And Gibo, again, is one of the 9 that looks the same either way. And this one also is all in the reverse. So the overall energy for the week is Gibo in the reverse, and it's not particularly great. It talks about problems with the root of an emotional problem of some kind or nature. So somebody having a difficult time finding what the actual cause of the way or why they feel a certain way or why they're acting or responding in a certain way. They're having a very difficult time. And I would argue that, of course, they're referring here to those who are the karmic side of the line of energy right now. They're also going through, a sense or need to be greedy, to feeling a sense of loneliness, and dependency, obligations. Perhaps they feel that they have a sense of feeling like they're toiling endlessly, maybe living in a state of privation. They don't have everything they believe they need, and practicing things which are less than, high vibrational, like, bribery, things of that nature, to buy their way to a certain outcome or out of a certain outcome, if you will, instead of actually doing the right thing. So it's not a particularly good energy, but it is warning us that those who are, of the karmic nature, whether we're absolutely aware of it consciously or not, many of us are, but some of us may not be. There are people, or at least a person, in everybody out there's life who's watching this, who is in this energy. They may be wearing a mask, as I've stated, so some of them are much better at hiding, this type of true energetic expression of themselves. And they may, come out as being smiling and loving, or, overly so in some cases. But deep down inside, according to the energy we're seeing, they at least do not particularly care very much for you. And I don't want anybody to become paranoid over this. This is something that has persisted for now months. So I'm hoping that most of you out there have a pretty good idea who these people actually are in your life. And it'll be obviously different for all of us, how it's represented, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a parent, whether it's a spouse of some kind, or a close personal friend perhaps. It's always the ones closest to you. You don't want to believe that of these people, especially if you're empathic. But unfortunately, in my experience, it's proven again and again to be the fact. The ones closest to you can do the most harm, so those are the ones that are going to be used in that capacity to get under your radar, and they can teach you the harshest of lessons. But hopefully you will learn those lessons so you don't have to repeat them again. And again, just like anything else, you get a wound, that wound heals, forms scar tissue, and it makes it harder to, damage that specific area a second time. Same thing can happen to us spiritually. If you allow it to really sink in, and you really reflect upon the lessons that we're here to learn on these things, then it was worthwhile. It was worth, going through the turmoil and everything else that you had to experience in order to bring this thing out into the open to a point where now it can heal. That's what it's all about. Now, in terms of the future outcome for today, that again is Perth Row. This is Perth Row. Now, Perth Row basically in the reverse. So it talks about secrets that are being revealed. So whether it's absolutely coming to a head for you today or not, it's basically implying that very, very soon, many of the things that have been hidden are coming to light. Okay. Also talks about unexpected results manifesting. You're going to see who it was who was truly disloyal to you very soon. It talks about somebody who's suffering from addictions, possibly in a state of stagnation of some kind. And again, loneliness. So somebody who's feeling very lonely. And I know you may feel empathy for this person, whomever it is, but keep this in mind. A lot of times that we're allowed to experience these very difficult lessons, both from the learning via the actions of these karmic individuals or the karmics themselves. If you try to ease the burden of the karmic, if there was somebody close to you, you're going to have that temptation. But this is a lesson you also have to learn, and I'm sharing this from my own experiences. You will find that you are enabling them in some way. You are robbing them of the very thing that could have woken them up to get them out of this karmic mindset and trap. This bondage to the things that is, keeping them basically from being able to become a better version of themselves. So even though you believe you're doing a good thing and you want to do what is good and right for somebody else, do unto others, we all know the golden rule, and it does apply, but every rule that we have that we truly believe in, there is still lines. You have to understand there's laws of reciprocity and everything else that we also have to consider. Universal laws, like cause and effect, and things I've talked about yesterday. So you have to apply this in a very wise sense. Again, where's the line? You have to have it because they don't. They haven't learned that lesson yet. And they will, without even a second thought, drag you into their karma to help lighten the burden off of themselves. So keep that in mind. And I say this only, as a reminder, not again trying to make you feel paranoid or anything like that, but just to consider the situation in its entirety before making a decision in regards to this. I understand how powerful, the desire to help and to do good is. Okay? Well, remember they have an equal desire, in some cases, very severe desire to do wrong or bad. Or maybe they don't know the difference. Some of them deliberately are doing these things knowing full well, just what they're doing. Some of them are so overtaken or controlled by other influences or I'll just leave it at that. Other influences, so that, who knows, they may not even be in their right mind while they're doing it. You may be the only one capable of waking them up. Allow them to experience what it is that has been placed there in front of all of us to learn. And sometimes that means pain. We feel it from them, and sometimes the only way that they're going to grow is to feel it too, or to feel their own pain from their own actions. We feel it at no penalty from our own actions. We've allowed this person or persons into our lives, and they've treated us in a very unfair manner. Now we are suffering the repercussions of their actions towards us. How we respond is just as important as how we, treat them as well. And sometimes it takes a great deal of wisdom to see the line in the sand as to where empathy ends and justice, begins, if you will. Empathy ends, justice begins. Okay. All right. So that is the overall energy for today, Monday the 10th. And again, happy birthday to my fellow Marines out there. And I've got a song that I put together for you that I'm going to be posting out here very soon as well. If not today, tomorrow perhaps. We'll see. But that's all I have for today, and I hope to hear from some of you guys out there pretty soon. In the meantime, you guys take care, and I'll see you in Valhalla.